Thank you. As Peter says, yes, now for something really different. As he says, I'm here to talk about human death and decomposition and a remarkable place called the body farm, which is the only place of its kind in the world. It's the only laboratory on Earth that is devoted to the study, scientific study of postmortem human decomposition. And it's a grim subject, but it's also a fascinating subject and a very important subject, because the information that has emerged from the body farm over the last 25 years has revolutionized the science of forensic anthropology and has helped apprehend and convict numerous murderers around the globe. So I hope you'll look at it with an open mind. This is anthropology, so the science of man, of the human. So in that spirit, I want to start with a little physical exercise. You can use your own anthropological organism. I want you to take your hand, spread your fingers apart just a little bit, okay? And this is a test of your hand-eye coordination. Bring one hand up over your eyes so you can see out just a little bit. And bring that down, and the other hand. Okay, let's do this 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so one hand feels better than the other, right? Okay, your dominant hand probably. So that's the hand you may need to use later when the video plays. If it gets a little too intense, you do this. So this is a trick that I learned from my wife, because this is the way she had to watch the video. And sometimes even looking through the fingers is not enough. Sometimes you have to close the fingers all the way. I'm really happy. I'm excited to be in Holland. I was remembering as I started to get ready for this that when I was a child, one of my favorite stories was the Dutch folk tale of the little boy who puts his finger in the dike to save Holland. That made a very, very big impression on me for years. You know, I wanted to be a hero. I wanted to save the day. So yesterday, when I learned that story was completely fabricated, it broke my heart. You know, and stranger still, the story, not only it's a complete fabrication, but it was fabricated by an American. And the strangest part, I learned, is that the Dutch Tourism Bureau has put up a statue in Spaardam of this heroic little Dutch boy who never existed, so that American tourists, when they come over, they can say, oh yeah, there's the little boy, yes. So. But thinking about that story, at least, got me thinking about Holland and about water and about life and death, and the amazing balancing act that you do here between life and death. Water here is the stuff of life, but also, of course, the stuff of imminent, looming death. It's the same everywhere, of course, but here, the balancing act that you do all the time is much more visible and dramatic and tenuous. Well, we humans are like little Hollands walking around, or big Hollands in the case of some of you Dutch. You're very tall people. I had a Dutch journalist come over a few weeks ago. Some of you probably know of him, Ed van Eden. He's a writer here. Giant man. When I met Ed, I thought, no wonder Holland is below sea level. All these big people push it down. But we humans are like that. Of course, our challenge is not to keep all the water out, but to keep it in. Within our bodies, our cell walls are the dikes and the dams that create the biological polters, am I saying that right? That we call our eyes and our hearts and our brain and our bones. And so we are constantly playing the balancing act with water ourselves. And as long as we maintain that balance, we live. And when we die, we are ferried, according to ancient mythology, we're ferried across water, across the river Styx, the river of death. And our guide on that journey, our boatman, is a man named Charon, at least in ancient Greece. But in contemporary America, our guides on a journey to death is named Dr. Bill Bass, a forensic anthropologist at the University of Tennessee, the man who created the Body Farm to study human death and human decomposition. Peter invited Dr. Bass to come to this conference, by the way, and he very much wanted to come, but Dr. Bass is 75, and long airline flights are very difficult for him, so he could not come. He sent me instead. Because I could not bring Dr. Bass to you, I hope, in a sense, to take you to the Body Farm. It's been my privilege to accompany Dr. Bass on his journeys to the realm of death for the past 3 years. I did this first in 2 National Geographic videos about the Body Farm, and I'll show you parts from one of those. And then, as Peter said, most recently, Dr. Bass and I have done a book, which is called, in English, it's called Death's Acre. In Dutch, much more simple, it's called De Body Farm. And I think both the English language and the Dutch editions are out here. So if you're interested, if you're not too scared by this, you can look. I think the English language edition has some black and white photos in it. I think the Dutch edition does not. So that's the difference. I want to show you first a clip from the first of the 2 National Geographic documentaries that I did. It's called Biography of a Corpse. I thought it would be interesting when I was thinking about how to do something about the Body Farm. I thought it would be interesting to tell the story of one of the research corpses there from the very beginning, from the time he came out and went onto the ground there until the time that his remains were brought in at the end of the study. So that is his life as a corpse, from the time of death to the time that he's taken in and his bones are cleaned up and put in a box. So it's about 8 minutes long. You might think, oh, he's so lazy, he didn't even write, much of a speech. He just shows a video. But actually, this 8 minutes of video can tell you far more about the Body Farm than I could tell you in 800 minutes. I spent months working on this part. So again, all right, you ready? Okay? Okay, if you could play the first video clip, please.
Here is a place where death is seen as a beginning.
There's no other place that can document in a laboratory setting the processes that occur in nature during human decomposition.
A team of pioneering scientists explore life from a brave new angle.
To watch a body decompose from day 1 of the postmortem time up until a year is phenomenal.
Inside this 3-acre plot, the line dividing life from death is erased.
It's not an area of death, it's an area of life.
Death isn't everything stopping. Death is the beginning of new processes that are invading that body and transposing it.
At the center of this quest for knowledge is the corpse of a selfless individual. His donation, a legacy of flesh and bone, will help unlock the complex mysteries of human decay, here at a place called the Body Farm. Death finds us all sooner or later. This year, an estimated 2.5 million people will die in America alone. But what happens after death? For centuries, science has struggled to chart nature's course on flesh and bone. At this unique facility, death is seen, scrutinized, and deciphered. Here, death marks not an end, but a beginning. The start of an amazing odyssey observed by anthropological and forensic researchers at the University of Tennessee.
The drill is that we are going to pull him out of the truck.
One of them is graduate student Robin Miller.
All right. Ready? This upper body's going to drop. You have the strength? Yep.
Miller hopes to contribute new data on decomposition and the role that one key variable plays in the rate of decomp.
Okay.
Emerging from a plastic cocoon is the corpse of a 76-year-old man.
Well, we'll probably go ahead and bring him this way, so we'll tuck all of this stuff underneath him.
Together with Miller, he has crossed into a new realm. In this world, the dead are not feared. They're approached each day with fascination, respect, and gratitude.
I always try and take a minute and say thank you, because without them, we wouldn't be able to do any of this research, and this place would not exist.
Officially, this remarkable laboratory is called the Anthropology Research Facility, but its grisly nickname is the Body Farm. Here, nature takes its toll on human corpses, some unclaimed from county morgues, others willed by the deceased or donated by their families. At every step, researchers study how bodies are transformed by decay. The facility lies on several acres of wooded hillside across the Tennessee River from downtown Knoxville. This season, the staff has laid out some 30 corpses. They are tucked beneath underbrush, buried in shallow graves, hidden completely under slabs of cement. The research, designed to chart decomposition under a wide range of conditions, was inspired by a real-world mystery some 25 years ago. It all began with a body unearthed in a backyard, and a man who would become a pioneer in the field of forensic science, Dr. Bill Bass. In 1977, Bass was a state forensic anthropologist who was about to learn a lesson the hard way. Even in death, appearances can be deceiving.
I got a call one afternoon. It was between Christmas and New Year's. It was cold, from the Williamson County Sheriff's Office, telling me that they had a grave that had been disturbed. Would I come and help? So I get over there. This is a family cemetery, back of a home.
Someone had broken deep into the earth near a headstone. Just beneath the surface, a headless male corpse. The remains looked fairly fresh. Police needed to know how fresh. Had a new body been added to the old grave? Dr. Bass agreed the body was in good shape. Pink flesh still clung to the bones.
I looked at it. I said, you have a 24 to 28-year-old white male who's been dead about a year.
But something didn't add up. The corpse's clothing was cotton and very old-fashioned. As it turned out, the body belonged to Colonel William Shy, a rebel officer killed in the Civil War. Shy had been buried in an airtight cast-iron coffin, one that preserved his corpse until grave robbers broke in. The body was pulled out as they searched for relics. Bass had misjudged the time since death by a whopping 112 years.
People wonder why I started a body farm. It's because of a couple of experiences like that that make you realize that, you know, you really don't know much about decay rates, and we need to do something about that.
So Bass made a request to university officials for a place to pursue a visionary plan. In 1980, he got what he wanted, a wooded tract a bone's throw away from the University Medical Center. In the early years, the corpses were allowed to decompose into skeletons to be used for teaching and research purposes. But the focus soon shifted to the process of decay as well. In the past 2 decades, over 400 corpses have decayed on this hillside. Their decomposition has revealed a world of data. It's also opened a new view of death and its place in the cycle of life.
In this research facility, we do research on death, rates of decay. However, we're surrounded by life. There are mockingbirds in the trees, the leaves are falling. We're surrounded by all kinds of insects and animals that frequent decaying bodies. So it's not an area of death, it's an area of life, of the changes that go on in life, this life occurring even after the point of death.
Robin Miller's research corps is about to embark on a dramatic sequence of changes. As he does, he'll shed crucial new light on human decomposition. The work here has a value beyond pure science. It's part of a continuing effort on behalf of us all to help solve real-world murder cases and bring killers to justice.
Okay, so that gives you an idea about the body farm. Let me say just a couple of things. Let me tell you a little bit about our main character here, our hero of our biography. He's known as 3101, because he was Research Corps number 31, the 31st corpse of the year 2001. That's how they designate the bodies. He was preceded by Corpse 3001, and he was followed by Corpse 3201. He, of course, has a name, but there, during the research, he's known only by his number. And if you noticed when she was putting the tag onto his ankle and his wrist, that was a tag that had 3101 stamped onto it, so that whenever they go back and are looking at that corpse or the bones, they can see, oh yes, this is 3101. He was put out here on such and such a date. I want to explain just a little bit more about the focus of the research there. The main area of interest there is charting the sequence of events and the timing of the events as a body decays or decomposes. Out in the real world, when the police find a murder victim, they need to know several things. They want to know, of course, who was it? And the anthropologist, by looking at things like if there's not identification on the body, if there's not a driver's license or a passport or something, the anthropologists look at things like teeth and fillings and dental records. They may look at broken bones and try to compare those. If they have an idea who it was, they can compare dental records or x-rays of broken bones and so on with the corpse to see if they can make a match and make an identification. They want to know how they were killed, if possible, if there are knife marks on the ribs or a bullet hole in the brain, in the skull. And they want to know how long they've been dead so that they can start narrowing the search for suspects. If my body ends up floating down the canal through Amsterdam in 2 weeks, the police are going to want to know, well, when did he go into the canal? If there's a knife in my back, when was the knife put there? Was it yesterday when his wife was already back in the U.S. for 2 weeks? Or, has he been floating around in the canals for 2 weeks? So maybe we need to bring the wife back and question the wife. How many of you are married? How many are married? Most of you. Okay, so if your spouse dies, you are suspect number one. If you die, your spouse is suspect number one. It's an interesting commentary on marriage, but that's not my subject today. So by studying, very systematically, by studying the changes that a body goes through after death and recording when those happened, not just according to the time that's elapsed, but also according to the temperature that's elapsed. That's very crucial. Temperature is the main variable that determines how quickly a body decays. And in fact, they've worked out a formula. They track what's called accumulated degree days. In terms of Celsius degrees, which you use here, when death first occurs, if you record the average temperature of the day of death, and then the next day you record the average temperature, and the day after that, and the day after that, and you start adding those together. If it's 20 degrees Celsius the first day, and 15 the second day, and 15 the third day, was that 50 degrees Celsius? The body, by the time 50 Celsius degrees have accumulated, will have undergone some characteristic changes. It will probably begin to swell or bloat, and there will be some insect activity and so on. Now, if you're someplace cold, like Moscow or Oslo, those changes won't happen as quickly because it's colder. But at the same point, at 50 accumulated degree days, the body will look the same. If you're someplace really hot, where maybe it's 35 degrees, for consecutive days, the changes are going to be really fast. And by the time you accumulate about 700 Celsius degrees, so that's, what, 35 degrees a day times 20 days, or 10 degrees a day times 70 days, decomposition more or less comes to an end. And the body will either at that point be a complete skeleton, or there will be dried, mummified tissue on the bones, and all the soft tissue underneath will be gone. So now the next clip I'm going to show you is very brief. This is where you may be more likely to need the hand over the eyes. But it's sort of like, think of it as a roller coaster ride, though. You know, if you're riding on a roller coaster, if you're brave, you don't hold on to the bar. You know, you hold your hands up like this. So if you're brave, you know, you won't need to do this. But if you need to do it, that's fine. So let's have the second clip, please. This is a time-lapse sequence, a sequence of photos that was taken, one photograph every few hours over the course of the entire 52 days that corpse 3101 was out at the body farm. So, next clip, please. Now that's at the end of the process.
And it took him 52 days to get to that point. In the summer, you know, maybe it's going to take
different body.
less if someone is nude, and it's going to take maybe twice as long if someone is clothed, which is the results that I found for the summer.
(3101) has left his mark on the field of forensic anthropology. He's also destined to become part of the Atlas of Decomposition, and
Okay, sorry that stopped abruptly. A couple things I want to point out. You may have noticed these waves of insects sort of flowing off of his face. Those are, I think the Dutch word is maden, maggots. They're the principal agents of consuming a body. They're primarily what's responsible for reducing a body to a skeleton. You also probably noticed the body swells up, the abdomen bloated and then collapsed. That's as decomposition gases build up inside the abdomen and then are released. And you may have noticed the sort of greasy black fluid or liquid oozing particularly out, you know, around the shoulders and around the head onto the ground. Those fluids are called volatile fatty acids, and they're released as bacteria break down the proteins and the fats in the cells. And interestingly, one of Dr. Bass's proteges has developed a chemical analysis method that can take a little sample of the soil from underneath a body, or even a spot where a body was lying, even if the body was later moved. And he can analyze that soil sample and look at the ratios of different chemical compounds in the volatile fatty acids from the body, and he can read that like a chemical clock to determine time since death. So there's very interesting and some sophisticated research coming out of the body farm. They're not just looking at rotting corpses, they're becoming very, very sophisticated in the kinds of analyses they can do to help pinpoint time since death. And that data is having an impact all around the world, including here in Holland. So I want to show just briefly one last clip. It introduces you to 3101 as he was when he was alive. And the reason I want you to see this is because I like to remember him, and I want you to remember him this way, not the way you saw him in the last sequence. Okay, please.
Teacher. I mean, most of us, after we get to a certain age, we enjoy teaching, but he loved learning. He never stopped learning. He really was interested in being involved in people understanding more about their body.
(3101) could not have scripted his post-mortem career any better. Only here could he have given so much in death to help the living. Here at the Anthropology Research Facility, a place where life and death are intimately entwined, where scientific data and human justice go hand in hand, where knowledge and truth emerge from flesh and bone. Here on a hillside in Tennessee, known as the Body Farm.
So that's it. As I said at the beginning, death, as the video says, death will find us all someday. But in the meantime, like the man who became Corpse 3101 and like the courageous little Dutch boy who never existed, we can use our energy to maintain and to embrace life to the fullest. Thank you.